Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachariyana Yamunatira Vanachariyana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Radhanata Radha Radhanata Radhe. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Shri Nitai Gaur Hari ki, Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. So we're using an electronic copy of the book called Transcendental Diaries. Or Diaries, sorry. But they are diaries because it's so many volumes. So let us offer our invocation. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shyuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kunda Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpadarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya evacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Everyone. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam Pangam langayate girim Yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru dinatarinam Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Godadaya Pushpavanto Chitro Sando Tamonudo. Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya have arisen like the sun and the moon on the horizon of Sri Gauradesh, and they're delivering the conditioned souls from the darkness of material ignorance. So you're reading from Transcendental Diary, Volume 3, Chapter 5, titled Paris and New Mayapur. Because it's speaking about Prabhupada, so it is scripture. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So thank you very much, Madhurya, playing Madanga so nicely. So you and Bilva Mangal are like the pillars that keep the program going every morning. And thank you so much for that. If we come here and we don't see Bilva Mangal and Madhurya, then it's like, where are they? We also want to wish Ujala a happy birthday. Hari Hari Bo. All the Vaishnavas can give blessings to her. And today is your day to give us blessings. So we pray to you that you can always give us your mercy and help us when we are falling short, which is quite often. So you can help us. We pray to the devotees. So chapter 5, Paris and New Mayapur. So Hari Sauri Prabhu was Prabhupada's secretary from 1975 to 1977. He traveled with Prabhupada. So he wrote his notes, and I think towards the 80s he started to put those notes out, which is very important. Every disciple of Srila Prabhupada, it behoves them to write their encounters about Srila Prabhupada, because we are seeing first-hand accounts of the pure devotee. In the future, sometimes things enter the realm of legend, and people can question it, and so on. How is that possible? How did that person do that, etc. But if they are first-hand accounts, what is that evidence called? First-hand evidence? It's called primary evidence. When you write it down and it's read by somebody else, and if you are the author of it and they're reading your work, that's primary evidence, because you are there, you said it. But if somebody else referred to you, then that's secondary evidence. But primary evidence is very important. Hari Sauri was with Prabhupada and wrote it down. And he wrote down the activities of a pure devotee. And therefore we can see through the eyes of Hari Sauri Prabhu. Just much like how Sanjaya, we saw through his eyes what was happening on the battlefield with Arjuna and Krishna. So we are now seeing. So that is called Shruti, first hand, or spoken by the Lord is Shruti. So this is being spoken by Hari Sauri Prabhu. So it kind of falls in that category. We're hearing his words about Prabhupada. So Prabhupada, this is July 30th, 1976. And it's written as a diary, so you'll find it's short statements and little paragraphs, and then it moves on to another section. And so it's not necessarily written in an argumentative fashion or a kind of a narrative, descriptive fashion, like a book, right? In which you follow a storyline, but it's given. So Hari Sauri Prabhu says, this is now July 30th, 1976. Prabhupada is still weak, and after a very short morning walk, he returned to his quarters without entering the temple room. He is still full of mucus and alters his diet frequently to speed his recovery. He told me that traditional Indian cooking is such that by proper combination of spices and diet, one can cure almost any disease and still enjoy palatable dishes. So that's quite an important instruction for all the cooks, right? That proper combination of spices and diet. Therefore, we have to follow the Vedic cuisine. It is given, right? So now we see how the Western world is kind of, what they do is they have a tendency, the West, unfortunately, to appropriate, steal, nice word to say, yeah? They appropriate the culture and all the beneficial things from other indigenous cultures, and then they pass it off as if it's their own. So you go now past any restaurant and you'll see chai latte. So they took the Italian latte, milk, and chai, Indian, put it together, chai latte, it became fashionable. All the spices are in there. From where it came? Came from the Indian cuisine. Something else I saw. They've got turmeric milk. So they use the turmeric, which we know is a blood purifier, and they put it, and they call it some latte, golden latte or something. What was it? It's something. You go through the mall, you see these things on there, and we also got to observe these things. It's not that we can walk blindfolded, and when you do that, then it helps us make this point, right? It's because now you can use it as an example. So proper combination of spices and diet. So that's very important. So what's the science that on which we base diet and so on from the Vedas? Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is a science which caters for the different doshas we have. We have 3 of those: Pitta, Vata and Kapha. And when they're out of sync, then we get ill. So by proper diet. So proper diet means we should eat according to our dosha or constitution. So for example, some people may suffer with their tummies and all of that. Then they're not supposed to eat beans, but they will be enjoying the beans. But according to their dosha, they're not meant to be having that. So if they stay away from it, then okay, no IBS, right? So like that. So proper diet. So Prabhupada is giving the instruction. So now we see there's a case here about that. Harikesh Maharaj is cooking, but has not done much of it since leaving Prabhupada's party in February. So he was also traveling in Prabhupada. Hariswar is reporting. Unfortunately, he is a little out of practice, and thus far has not quite found the right formula to please His divine grace. So it means the proper combination of spices has not been there. In fact, Prabhupada is complaining, especially over what he offered him today. Instead of making the usual wet sabji from peas, tomatoes and fried paneer, freshly made cheese cubes, Harikesh decided to cook the paneer cubes in a thick sugar solution and make a sweet. Hariswari says, when I took the plate into Srila Prabhupada's room from the small kitchen next door, Prabhupada looked dubiously at the preparation and said, "What is this? Call him immediately." Harikesh came in a little sheepishly, and Srila Prabhupada roundly criticized him for what he called his mental speculation. So now, for Prabhupada, for offering for Prabhupada for his Vyasa Puja and so on, so what we can do? Peas, tomatoes and fresh paneer. There's one sabji there, right? But find out how it was. We can do that. Don't make thick sugar solution with paneer cube. So this is called mental speculation, and we see that because we now we want to do what we call them artisanal menu. That's how we advertise it, artisanal menu. So then we with us now we start to speculate and we change things, and we want to give people an experience of something for the senses, but we speculate also. And we have great cooks. We have Yamuna, who followed Srila Prabhupada's instructions. She put a cookbook that's like an encyclopedia, right? Thick one. And there's Kurma. So and if you try the recipes, it does come out nice. So after that, another incident. Prabhupada sat with Harikesh Maharaj and I after his short morning rest. He asked Harikesh about conditions in the communist countries, telling him that materialistic communism, where there is no independent eating, living, or thinking, is comparable to animal existence. For animals also have no independence. He therefore said, Srila Prabhupada said, we have to try to save everyone by developing centers like this one. So they're in Paris. So I'm not sure which center they were. Anybody knows from the previous chapter? Because there's one in the city, and there's one outside the city, Chateau d'Ublay. That is the castle that they have, beautiful castle, which we almost lost, that castle, because the devotees were defaulting on payments. But that's another wonderful leela of how they got it back. That's some other time. I can't quite see the clock in this light there. What are we at? 8 o'clock, thank you. So, Prabhupada sat with Harikesh, and he's speaking to Harikesh about conditions in the communist countries, telling them that materialistic communism. So that means if there's materialistic communism, then there's spiritual communism. And where did you read that? Which was your first book? Raghunath? Science of Self-Realization. There's a chapter, there's a section there, spiritual communism. And in 1971, Srila Prabhupada went to the communist country with Shyama Sundar. And Prabhupada, there's one lecture, Prabhupada speaks about how the secret police approach. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. How the KGB, I'm saying SGB, KGB, they stopped them and spoke to Srila Prabhupada and so on. And Prabhupada said he would have almost been arrested. And somebody else saw and asked him about what is he and so on. And he said, it's okay, let them go. So Shyama Sundar took a risk. He smuggled one Bhagavad Gita into the country. So at that time, communist Russian was called the Iron Curtain. And during the 80s and so on, the 70s, 80s, there's a lot of tension between the United States. It still is, which they call the Cold War. Who is superior in terms of military might, and that still goes on now. But that was a very tense period. And for an American to go to Russia with his American passport would be suspicious. Shyama Sundar went, and Srila Prabhupada went, and they lived at a hotel. And while they were on the street, they saw two boys. One was an Indian male and one was a local Russian. I think the male was the son of some diplomat. And because of his familiarity to the culture, immediately said namaste, pranams like that, and they stopped to speak. And this man, Russian, Anatoly Prayanev, or something like that. Anatoly, anyway, his first name. Also referred to as Ivan somewhere. He was very excited to hear about what Prabhupada was speaking, and then so sometime later, trying to get the details right from Prabhupada Leela. Sometime later, when Prabhupada was in the hotel room, and then Shyamasundar invited two youth to come up to the room. Said, "My spiritual master is there. I'd like to meet him, speak to him, and so on." So they went up. Oh yeah, that's when this Anatoly went up, and Prabhupada was going to be in Russia, Moscow, only for 2 days. So he spent all his time preaching to this one person, Russian. And then Shyamasundar gave him that Bhagavad Gita. And this Anatoly became the first Hare Krishna. Prabhupada initiated him and gave him the name Ananta Shat Shashi. So he became the first Russian who became personally empowered by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, imagine Prabhupada gives you all that time. It is said 1/11 of the second is enough, right? Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra, right? Lava Matra, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi. Lava 1/11 is enough for all the siddhis, all the potency to be manifest in you. But Prabhupada gave him these hours, and he became that first devotee. And after that, Hare Krishna movement began like fire underground in Russia. They made copies. They were making handwritten copies of Bhagavad Gita, spreading it everywhere underground. And that's how, because they couldn't do any printing. The KGB is watching every move. And later on in the 1980s, 9 years later, the Hare Krishna movement had become so big that even the government had recognized. And one of the ministers, some security portfolio he had, he said, there are 3 great threats to the Russian culture. Western culture, pop music, and the Hare Krishnas. Imagine he gave that the status as one of the threats to the country. Right? Because so Prabhupada says here that there was no independent eating, living, or thinking under the materialistic communism, because people lived under control. State security is very strong. Like in China at the moment, everywhere they say there's cameras. I haven't been to China, but everywhere. If you commit a crime on the street, they'll catch you almost immediately because you are there on the cameras. And people are just monitoring everything. Where you walk, what you do, you leave your house, where you go, everything is seen. So it's state-controlled. After the 80s, though, that kind of collapsed. The Iron Curtain collapsed. And we think it's due to the Hare Krishnas. So, therefore, and they had one of those early big festivals there in the stadium and so on. The Hare Krishna devotees went. It's very beautiful. There is one devotee called Prahlad. And he was a little boy then. And once the government started to detect that the Hare Krishnas became a so-called threat, they would imprison the devotees. And those were concentration-type camps. Psychiatric torture, all of that was the devotees were subject. And many died in prison. Right? So there is a book written by somebody, A Piece of Bread. What is that book? Salted bread. Thank you so much for that. Salted bread. So salted bread, that's what they were getting. And didn't allow them to make any japa beads, so he took the bread and rolled it. If you leave bread out rolled or something, it becomes hard, right? Rolled it into beads, made of beads out of that, chanting beads. So this is how they were being persecuted. So there's so many leelas about that. One devotee was being interrogated by the KGB, and they tried everything, to get all the details out of the devotee. Where's the rest? Where are the rest of them? And some, cloak and dagger stuff. And then they couldn't. So they brought a witch. Now we read about these in the stories, and are they real? Yes, they are real. Prabhupada speaks about them in the Krishna book. The kecharis who fly on the broom in the north. That's how they got this image, in cartoons you see that witches flying on the broom. So the kechari, they're able to use their mystic power and empower some object as a vehicle, jump on it and go. How nice. You can just go to anywhere you want. So the kechari, so they brought this witch to try and, what is the word? Bewitch this devotee so they could get details. And she tried, and suddenly, in the middle of that bewitchment, she stopped and she said, I'm going, I have to go. And they want to know, what's happened? Why can't you execute your power? He said, no, there's this man, he's admonishing me, and I can't get past him. And described him. Srila Prabhupada is protecting the devotee. So, we have to develop spiritual communism, and that is what Srila Prabhupada speaks about in that section in Science of Self-Realization. He had an interview with Professor Kotovsky. And Kotovsky was an Indologist. So the word Indology means study of, like ecology, biology, the study of. And Indology means the study of India. So there were many Indologists, even the British Indologists. But what was their purpose? They had a motive. Indology, British Indology, was actually created so that they could penetrate the teachings of the Vedas and then discount it as inferior, which they did. In fact, you find Christian scholars, they claim that many of the Vedic points that have been borrowed from Christianity rather than the other way around. So the Indology was established for that purpose. And many Indologists, their sole purpose was to dismiss the claims of the Vedas. But it has stood the test of time, because we can see now how so much of the Vedic knowledge is showing the ancient wisdoms. Right? So much of the truth is coming out through the ancient Vedas that scientists are seeing now. For example, one of the things is cosmology. Lord Brahma's lifespan, some 300 trillion years. And Western cosmology, they are dating the universe almost similar. Times, frames, and so on. Western cosmology is also changing its thinking from saying that the universe, time is linear, that started and it just goes in one direction. Now they are seeing that it's cyclical, as the Vedas have said. And they are now promoting multiverse. So we know There are multi-universes, right? So all of these are coming out in the movies and so on, the comics. They're using these things like that. So, yes, so we see that he was an Indologist, Kotovsky. And the Russians were studying other cultures also to do the same thing, to see how to penetrate that with communism. So he was in a discussion with Srila. He was fairly polite from what I read, from how I see it. But he was asking. And Srila Prabhupada presented that the spiritual communism is already existing. Communism without God in the center is dry and detached and is dead. There's no purpose to that. But communism with Krishna in the middle is spiritual, because then everybody uses their propensities for the service of the Supreme Lord. And that is called Varnashram Dharma. Varna and Ashram. Chaturvarnam Maya Shristam Guna Karma Vibhagasa. So Krishna says, according to the modes and the qualities of the living entities, I have created these 4 Varnas and 4 Ashrams. Spiritual orders and social orders. You know what they are. The spiritual orders are Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. And the social orders? Shudra, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana. So by having Krishna in the middle and then making Krishna the goal of all your Varnas, right, and ashrams, then that's Varnashram Dharma. So that was the discussion there. I'd encourage you to go back and pick up Signs of Self-Realization again and read. It's always nice to read. And actually, if you go back and read it, you'll see it's not just a simple book. It's quite deep. A lot of depth is in Science, because Prabhupada gave the essence whenever he's asked questions. So, there's a very instructive passage here about a very sensitive topic that occurs in ISKCON and creates a lot of consternation amongst practitioners. So let us read this. Next excerpt. Again, there are problems with the senior devotee. News arrived from Africa via Tamal Krishna Maharaj that Brahmananda Swami is having some personal difficulties. Not much detail is known, but Tamal Krishna Maharaj will investigate further. Brahmananda Maharaj is such a senior man that I was a little surprised by Prabhupada's muted reaction. He shook his head with exasperation and simply told Harikesh and Bhagavan, "What can I do? The GBC should deal with this." So, I remained in the room with Srila Prabhupada after his secretaries had gone out. He became a little contemplative and asked me whether any news had come of Madhu Visa in Hawaii. I told him that we heard he is now living with a woman. He showed some surprise and dismay, and then, his features softening in reflectiveness, said, "Sometimes I feel for Madhu Visa. Also Rishi Kumar. But by Krishna's grace, he has returned." So Srila Prabhupada, he gave initiation to so many devotees, and so many great devotees. They served Prabhupada with so much of devotion. But we see that they had some challenges, they had some difficulties, especially those in the sannyas ashram. And it's rather unfortunate that in ISKCON we do every now and then have a recurrence of some fall down of sannyasi and so on, which undermines the credibility of the practice of Krishna consciousness or the movement as ISKCON. But we have to understand also that those in these ashrams, Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu shared with me a nice video from, who was it? Bhakti Vikas Swami, and we know he is very strict as a sannyasi. And he was giving some wonderful advice about the sannyas ashram and how those who take to sannyas ashram should actually be so cautious because Maya is present at every stage. And therefore, it behoves a sannyasi to be extremely cautious and not relax one's guard in terms of association with the opposite gender, not to be found alone with the women, etc., all of that. So, some very wonderful insights from Maharaj, and here we're seeing Srila Prabhupada's feeling that also, that sadness, but his compassion is the overriding factor here. What does he say? With softness. Sometimes I feel for Mother Visa and also Rishi Kumar. So they did so much service for Prabhupada that Prabhupada would forgive their transgression. One story, one devotee, a lady, not a devotee, an ordinary person who was not practicing Krishna consciousness, she met some devotees in the street, and she heard Prabhupada, the word, and then she stopped them and asked them, "Who is this Prabhupada?" And they told her. Now, one of the devotees had fallen away from the path of Krishna consciousness, and he had married this lady. He was a Prabhupada's disciple. He had married her, and he kept his Krishna consciousness away from her, so to that extent that she didn't know about Krishna consciousness, about devotees. But he ended up, slipping away, breaking principles, just going back to materialistic life. And he became ill, and he was a semi-conscious state, lying on his bed, almost unconscious. And then at a point where he was about to leave his body, he miraculously sat up and said, "Prabhupada, Prabhupada, you have come for me." And he passed away. And therefore she wanted to know, who is this Prabhupada? And devotees explained. So, the mercy of the spiritual master is the only means by which we can obtain. So it's only means, the mercy of the spiritual, mercy of Srila Prabhupada. And therefore we have to consider our great fortune, and we have to try to remain chaste to Srila Prabhupada's instructions. There are so many distractions out there, and we ourselves out in the world, we see how distracting it can be. Therefore, if we always take shelter of the devotees, take shelter of Prabhupada's teachings, take shelter all the time. We cannot remain without sadhu sangha. If we remain without sadhu sangha, we will fall down. So, Harikesh Prabhu then asked Srila Prabhupada on one of the morning walks. He says, "I asked how it was that apparently advanced devotees fall down." Srila Prabhupada explained that even good men can fall from their elevated positions because we all have our independence. As soon as this is misused, Maya is there to punish and reform us. He said women means Maya, a weapon. And he noted that even Lord Shiva himself had fallen victim to the Mohini Murti avatar of Lord Krishna. So this is in context of the sannyasi and the women, right? It also behoves the women too to respect the ashram of the sannyasi and therefore not try to fraternize or try to be familiar. So in that way, sannyas ashram is also protected. So then there's another paragraph in which Srila Prabhupada initiates a devotee from China. And there too, Srila Prabhupada is very, very eager to spread Krishna consciousness to China because of the communist state as well. So now we do have devotees in China, but they do not, also they are clandestine, they meet, right? And they do not make a public show of their Krishna consciousness. You cannot do it. You cannot go out on the streets and proselytize and all of that. You'll be arrested. So Srila Prabhupada, I'll end with this paragraph. Can you? 825, thank you. So Srila Prabhupada's book distribution. Srila Prabhupada's books are the backbone of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It is the books by which that reach to millions of people. So there were different strategies of book distribution. And today at 10 a.m., there is a meeting for book distribution at 12 to, speaking of, I was just about to mention your name. Speak of the angel, and there she appears. So, I was just going to say, so she appeared. She is Indu Prabha Mataji and her team are heading up. You are there, Ujjwala. Heading up, there's a meeting for strategizing about Srila Prabhupada's book distribution. So at that time, libraries were very prominent. Right now, with technology, not so much, but libraries. So there was the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust Library Party. And this devotee, Bhugharba Das, who was with Mahabhudi Das in India, heading up the BBT Library Party, came in the afternoon to give a brief report on his activities. Prabhupada was keen to hear news of distribution of his books in universities and libraries. Maybe we have to strategize that again. Bhugharba said a professor, Dr. Radha Krishna, from the University of Edmonton in Canada, was writing a comparative study of bhakti in the Indian and Hebrew traditions. And he was using Srila Prabhupada's books exclusively as his source for the Indian tradition. So Srila Prabhupada's books became standard books of references in universities, right? Because of the efforts of devotees. The professor had ordered 3 full sets, Bhagavatam, 1 for himself and 2 for the university. Bhugharba said, the professor said, what is a good definition of bhakti? So that you can see the intellectuals are asking these questions. So Bhugharba then, I showed him the nectar of devotion. And from there gave him the definition of bhakti. Which is, what do you think? Which one? Which verse? Yes. Anya bhilasita sunyam jnana karmadi anavritam. And you can complete it. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Uttama. So you can see the intellectual, the academic was trying to understand. And in this anecdote, you also see how Srila Prabhupada has empowered his devotees. And Bhugharba was able to refer him to a definition of bhakti, which is actually a very, very elevated understanding of bhakti. That's why it's in the nectar of devotion. This, it is understood to be what is called the Paribhas Sutra. Paribhas Sutra is a set of principles, foundational principles, that set the idea for the further arguments to follow. It actually establishes the conclusion, and every argument after that in the book or scripture will relate back to that. So like in Srimad Bhagavatam, Paribhash Sutra is given in Canto 1. Ete chamsa kala pumsa Krishna astu bhagavan swayam indriyari vyakulam lokam mriddayanti yuge yuge. It establishes Krishna as the Supreme Lord by saying these are plenary expansions and expansions of expansions, portions of expansions. But of all of them, Krishna astu Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. So the whole Bhagavatam then establishes that point. It's made, and then how is Krishna the Supreme Lord? So similarly, Anya bhilasita sunyam jnana karmadi anavritam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhaktir uttama. When first-class devotional service develops, for first-class devotional service to develop, it must be free from jnana. What is that? Mental speculation. Karmadi, fruitive activities. Jnana karmadi anavritam. Included in there is also monism, meaning impersonalism. Jnana karmadi adi anavritam. Anukulyena Krishna anu shilanam bhaktir uttama. So the devotee then serves Krishna as he desires. Anukulyena Krishna anu shilanam bhaktir uttama. Uttama, it means highest. Uttam. Bhakti uttam, the highest bhakti. The highest love for Krishna is this. Serving Krishna as he desires, free from these. So what did the professor do? He said, oh, that is very good. And he wrote it down in his book. So Prabhupada nodded. Till now, they took bhakti as a matter of sentiment. Religious science they did not know all over the world. In other words, it's only now, by Prabhupada's establishing that they're coming to know. Then Bhugarbha continues. He said, the professor said he's trying to show by studying bhakti in Indian tradition and also in Hebrew tradition, he is Prabhupada cut in. Bhakti is not achieved by studying. Bhakti state is achieved by practice. That is the special significance of our institution, that we are engaging our men in practicing. Therefore, they are getting knowledge, not by reading. So this sounds a little bit, Prabhupada said we must read his books, and what does this mean? Not by reading. So we're talking here about the Gyanis who engage in mental speculation, who are trying to understand spiritual science by their own, dint of their own speculation and knowledge, their own scholarship. So that kind of reading won't bring you to bhakti, because it's very analytical. Even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said that devotional service is not measured by the yardstick of your material intelligence. It is to be gained. And we see that. Look at all the devotees of Srila Prabhupada's disciples that were serving him. They were serving him 24 hours 7. Prabhupada was doing programs everywhere. The devotees are hardly sleeping, getting up, going, coming back, organizing. Where was the time for them to read? But by service, bhakti bhavati naistaki. So, by service to the person Bhagavat, all that is contained in the book Bhagavat became revealed. to them. That Guru Krishna Prasad, that mercy, it became revealed. So therefore they became so knowledgeable. Now you hear them, you see how much they can analyze and speak. So it's by service. So we can, Prabhupada, and we'll end with this statement. Bhakti can solve everything, Prabhupada said. Social, economical, cultural, religious, everything. All right. So we are at 8:32. Are there any questions, comments I'd like to make? Very interesting Transcendental Diaries. I mean, we can just read it to find out the anecdotes, but there's an opportunity for also analyzing it and seeing deeper meanings in there. Anybody? So I had that question then. I mean, I gave you the statement. Prabhupada says we should read his books, we should study, but there I explained the mental speculative type of study. So how is that important for us? Studying Srila Prabhupada's books, reading his books. Indu Prabhu, give the mic, Bilva Prabhu, please.
Hi Krishna, Smita, Krishna Prabhu. Thank you for, I caught the last end of the class, but it sounded really nectarian, thank you. I think, in my studying of Srila Prabhupada's books, the real pennies drop when I'm internalizing and understanding how am I actually practicing what Srila Prabhupada is theoretically presenting in the books. And I think that brings the realizations forward in terms of relationships, in terms of association, extent of service, general state of mind in particular in conducting my service and association.
Yes, thank you so much. Prabhupada's books are the manual, the law books of mankind. So from Prabhupada's books we'll draw all of the qualities and characteristics and activities that we are meant to be subscribing to as devotees. That's how it comes from. Isaiah? This side, Bilva?
Hare Krishna. I just came right at the end, but I heard a few wonderful comments you made. So I am inclined to evidence-based knowledge and learning. So what is the relationship between faith and the pursuit of truth?
Good question.
Because I struggle with the concept of blind faith.
Yes.
Or I don't know if faith can ever not be blind. But I like the Sanskrit term shraddha. One interpretation of that is to incline yourself toward the truth. So, but faith is not something I can do anymore because I grew up in a Christian tradition. I had a calling for the first 28 years of my life, and I discovered that there were ethical problems and it might not be true. So the relationship between faith and absolute truth, not just subjective truth. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm also inclined towards evidence-based discourse. Everybody is searching for the truth. According to the methodologies they use, that truth will reveal itself proportionately or not reveal itself at all. Within the framework of spiritual truth, we speak of the absolute truth. In the material world, it's relative. The tools used by the scientists are subject to flow. The qualities of the person seeking the truth are flawed themselves. What are the 4 frailties we have? Imperfect senses, tendency to make mistakes, and cheating propensity, and subject to illusion. Thank you. Somebody's studying Prabhupada's books, that's good. So because of those frailties that we have, then we will not be able to understand the complete truth. In example, I've read an article, we are all now being subject to AI, artificial intelligence. It's a concern, right? Yeah. I saw a cartoon where 2 academics are speaking, and because it's rearing itself in the writings of the students. So one prof is asking the other, aren't you concerned about this increase in artificial intelligence? And the other one looks back. No, but I'm concerned about the decrease in real intelligence. Right? So now this article on AI, the programmers are concerned that the AI is learning to be deceptive, because it's a learning tool. It takes data from everyone and improves itself. That's how it is gains knowledge. 5 years ago, if you asked a question to AI, you ought to get a very answer that lacked information. Now you ask the same question, because people all over the world have been asking, so in the cyberspace it's building up its memory and so on. It'll give you a more substantive answer now. So it's also developing deception. When you sign in for your internet, for your bank account or whatever, it'll ask you, declare whether you are a robot. And it'll give you some squiggly things, because machines can't read that. So one of the AI programs deceptively entered somebody else's cyberspace on the computer, opened it up, asked the person to declare is not a robot, and they said yes, and then it used that information to go into this original site.